Hello, my name is Joe RAINERI and I am founder of the organization Not Good Enough. And I'd like to welcome you here to our show that's going to be dedicated to informing and updating both the members of Not Good Enough and the public as to the latest happenings regarding this super homestead exemption. Now, every week we're going to broadcast to you information that we think is vital to our efforts in making sure that this amendment, House Joint Resolution 3B, also known as the super homestead exemption, well, we want to make sure it fails on January 29, 2008. And over the next 5 months, we're going to do everything we can to help you better understand why this super exemption is just not good enough and why it is so important to make sure it does not pass in January. Now, the organization Not Good Enough believes it's so very important to make sure that this issue stays front and center on the minds of every Florida citizen from now until January 29th, which of course is when you will be asked to go to the polls and either vote for or against this amendment. And we of course are strongly urging every Florida citizen to vote no to this amendment. And with this show, we're going to explain why this is the case. And we also want to know what you think and what your concerns are. See, it's no secret how many Floridians are confused about this amendment right now, and of course how this super homestead exemption would work. And that's because our elected officials want it that way. Because you know what they say, a confused voter is an easy voter to manipulate. But we don't want you to be confused about this issue. We want to help you better understand how this plan will work and how it might affect you and your family. Because we feel that if given all the facts about this amendment, the voters of this state will never agree to it. So we want to hear from you. We're asking that if you have any questions or concerns, please email them to us at info@notgoodenoughflorida.org. That's info@notgoodenoughflorida.org. And each week we're going to pick some of your questions and answer them right here on the show. Now, it is so important that we make sure all citizens understand what is at stake here before we vote on January 29th. Not Good Enough is here to help you. So please let us do that by sending us your questions and concerns to info@notgoodenoughflorida.org. Now today, with this being our very first broadcast, I would like to review, especially for those of you who might be visiting us for the first time, what the organization Not Good Enough is all about and what we stand for. Because there's been a lot of press regarding our organization over the past few weeks. And many, I believe, have really misinterpreted what we're trying to accomplish. So I'd like to clear up some confusion with you right now. First and foremost, this organization is about making sure that this super homestead exemption does not pass. Now that's first and foremost. And again, we'll talk about all the reasons why over the coming weeks and months. And we also believe it to be so very important that the voters of this state understand both the pros and the cons surrounding this super exemption. Of course, with this being such a confusing issue to so many across the state, we must make sure that the folks understand what they are voting for on January 29, 2008. Now, having said that, there are a few things that we must guard against over the next 5 months. The first being voters going to the polls and voting yes to this amendment because they don't understand all the facts. Now, just yesterday I spoke to a couple who thought that this was a great plan until they found out that this super exemption comes without the security of the 3% cap the current Save Our Home system affords them. Now, they thought they could take advantage of the super exemption savings while still knowing their home could not be assessed more than 3% a year. And that's not the case. Because by opting for this super exemption, not only do you lose the security of your 3% cap on your taxable value, but how your property taxes will be calculated is also going to change. And now many of you might not know this, but your taxes are going to go from being calculated on your assessed value to what is now known as your market value. And the difference between the two is enormous. Now, I encourage you to visit your county property appraiser's website to see the difference for yourself. The only people this won't affect much are those who have purchased a home in the last 3 years. All of you that have owned longer, you're going to see a big difference. And again, let's not forget, this is for homesteaded primary owners only. The rest of you, well, you don't matter that much, at least not with this plan. And I also received an email from a couple who thought that when they sold their home, that this amendment would allow them to choose between either the Save Our Homes plan and its 3% cap or the super homestead exemption. They couldn't believe that they would no longer have a choice and that once they sold their home and relocated within the state, they'd only qualify for this new super exemption, which of course gives you no security of a 3% cap on your taxes. Now, these are just a few of the misconceptions that are affecting the way folks are thinking about voting. And Not Good Enough wants to make sure you are very clear on what will happen if this super exemption passes. Now, the second thing we need to guard against is this attitude that, well, something is better than nothing. And this just scares me to death because I believe this attitude really signals the beginning of a troubling trend here in Florida. Because this attitude means to me that the citizens of Florida have given up. Because when you tell me that something is better than nothing, when what we have now is atrocious, you're in essence telling me you've given up. You're telling me that you don't think our elected officials are capable of creating an equitable tax system. And you might just be right there, but we just can't sit here and settle for their mediocrity. You're telling me that we should just settle for this and be happy about it. You're telling me that there's no fight left in you. But I'm here to tell you, there's plenty of fight left in me, and there's plenty of fight in the members of Not Good Enough. Actually, I think there's plenty of fight in all of us, but what's happening here is that people are so scared and desperate for some sort of relief that in turn it's affecting their ability to dig down and fight for what we all know is right here. And that's a property tax system that calls for everyone to pay their fair share. And that is where Not Good Enough and its members come in. See, we're about standing up and fighting for a better Florida. We're about standing up and fighting for better elected officials, ones that listen and understand what the citizens have to say, not just what the lobbyists have to say. See, we're about standing up and fighting for an equitable property tax system, one that benefits all classes of property owners, not just homesteaded owners who've purchased in the last 3 years, and one that allows everyone to pay their fair share. We're about standing up and fighting for an equitable property tax system that includes a plan for Florida to somehow generate revenue so we don't have to be so dependent on property taxes to pay for everything. See, we're about standing up and fighting for a plan that will give folks a reason to come back to Florida and not a reason to pack up and move to North Carolina. So we're about standing up and fighting for those who might not have the courage right now to do so. We're also about standing up and fighting for a property tax system that is better than, well, just a good start, or one that's, well, better than what we have now. What is that exactly, and when has that ever been the right answer? No, see, what we want is to make sure our elected officials get it right this time. We want a property tax plan that will not require us to have to do this all over again in another 5 years. We want better. We deserve better than this super homestead exemption. We deserve a plan that doesn't have more questions than answers. And I'm just not going to sit idle by and allow our elected officials to think that this plan is acceptable at all, because it's not good enough. So Not Good Enough wants you to understand that what we stand for here is making sure, first and foremost, this super exemption does not pass on January 29th. Now, I've run out of time here, but remember, I want to know what your questions and concerns are. So please email us your questions or comments to info, I-N-F-O, at notgoodenough.florida.org. We'll get to your questions here on the show every week. We're here to help you make an informed decision. And please don't forget to spread the word about our organization and efforts. Also remember to listen to the radio show that started this all. What are you kidding me? It's the Real Estate Show with an Attitude, and it's heard Sundays from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. We have some great guests coming on the show over the next couple of weeks. Just log on to the show's website and hit the Listen Live button. You can reach it at www.talkshowjoe.com. That's www.talkshowjoe.com. I'm Joe RAINERI, and I want to thank you for spending a little time with me here today, and I look forward to hearing from you in the future. Remember, this super homestead exemption is not good enough. Tell everyone you know, the more support we have, the more powerful we become. Have a great week, and we'll talk soon.
What is hip?